Good morning. I'm Greg Stanton, and the organizers of our conference today have asked me to chair the conference, and so I have the honor of doing that. And we've had 2 days now of discussion of past genocides that have occurred in India. And then yesterday we talked about some of the current signs of impending genocide that we already see in India, some of the warning signs. Those signs are ways that we, I hope, can prevent genocide from again occurring in India. This morning, I just want to talk to you about some of the causes of genocide and how they help us understand what we need to do to prevent it. The genocide that we face in India is not a new phenomenon. India has had several genocides. And of course, what we've seen is that they have similar roots. So today I want to talk to you about how we can avoid it and about what is causing the current crisis. To do that, I want to get back to some of the basic sources, some of the basic causes of genocide. When people ask me what causes genocide, I usually say ethnocentrism. Of course, it's much bigger than that because we have made our ethnicity and our classifications of the world into bigger things than that. The most deadly form of ethnocentrism that we will discuss during this talk is nationalism. It is racism on steroids. And what we would like to do today is explore why it occurs and what we can do to overcome it. Now, human beings are ethnocentric. We're born into cultures that speak particular languages. We grow up in those cultures. We learn their customs and traditions. And we speak the languages of our mothers and fathers. That's why we call them mother tongues. Our languages and cultures provide the symbolic systems we use to think and communicate. And the human capability to use symbols is quite extraordinary. There's really no parallel in the world, or for all know, who knows where. There are more neurons in a single baby's brain, more neural connections than all the stars in the Milky Way. I think that's a miracle. But it gives us the power that we have to create, to symbolize, to make the world, to build machines, to build cities, to do all the things, to write plays, to write music, to do all the things that human beings can do. Now, cultures include religions that order our understanding of the world, our relationships with other people, and our relationships with the divine forces that we recognize through our religions. Religions define what is sacred, possessing relationships to the divine expressed in sacred texts, laws, symbols, traditions, and rituals. Religions are the way we center our lives and our cultures, because cultures have centers. Some are geographical, like capital cities. Others are religious. Jerusalem, Mecca, Mount Sinai, Rome, Lourdes, Hardwar, Ayodhya, Anuradhapura. These sacred centers are places where people gather to worship. Cultures also have boundaries. Some boundaries are defined by language, Germans speak German, French speak French, English speak English, and as the English like to remind us, Americans speak American. Other boundaries, of course, are geographical, defined by oceans, rivers, or mountain ranges. But today, the most important boundaries between people are cultural. People from different parts of the world have developed different families of languages, different colors of skin, different cultures, and different religions. Because we're ethnocentric, human beings normally prefer to join communities with other members of their cultures. They prefer to be with people who speak the same language. We marry and bear children within our cultures. And so our different ethnicities and our languages persist. So do our different religions. The problem that has plagued the human race throughout our history is that we not only prefer our own cultures, we can't understand people from other cultures. And we don't just avoid them. We question whether people so different from us are even human beings like us. We come to fear them. This is the deadly process of dehumanization. Leaders of genocidal societies call members of other groups vermin or cockroaches, cancers, microbes, or as Amit Shah, the BJP Home Minister of India, called Muslims, termites. Dehumanization is an essential stage or process of genocide because it renders members of the other group not human. So killing them would not be murder. In fact, killing them may even be cleansing or purifying the society. Dehumanization overcomes the normal human revulsion against committing murder. The stages or processes that accompany dehumanization are organization of hate groups and polarization of the society. Hate groups turn us versus them into, if you're not with us, you're against us. Moderates from the perpetrator's own group are called traitors because they are most capable of actually stopping genocide. They are usually the first people to be arrested and killed in a genocide. The polarization process includes the use of propaganda to convince potential recruits to militias and mobs that the real danger is from the group that is targeted. They're portrayed as the real killers who will kill us if we don't kill them first. Genocide scholars call this mirroring. Leaders of genocides project their own intentions onto their victims. Perpetrators mirror the image of their own intentions onto the people they intend to kill. Mirroring is one of the most accurate predictors of what the perpetrators intend to do themselves. Perpetrators of genocide use mirroring to justify their own crimes as self-defense. We've just seen mirroring used by Vladimir Putin to portray Ukrainians as planning to invade Russia when they had no such plans. But it makes the Russian invasion of Ukraine into self-defense. We saw mirroring in the Turkish portrayal of Armenians as traitors likely to join Turkey's Russian enemies. The Hutu Power Hate Radio in Rwanda accused Tutsis of planning to exterminate Hutus, when in fact, it was the Hutu Power Movement that planned to exterminate Tutsis. Social media like Facebook have made dehumanizing and polarizing propaganda fast and deadly. Facebook was the main platform for incitement of the Rohingya genocide. Facebook and WhatsApp, which is owned by Facebook, are now the main platforms for incitement in India. What causes war and genocide is when one cultural group comes to believe that its prosperity or survival depends on eliminating or controlling another group. The cultural center around which the group organizes its life is seen by members of one group as exclusively belonging to its own group. The group develops an exclusionary ideology. It sets boundaries that exclude others. When an exclusionary ideology is coupled with religion, it turns deadly. Exclusion becomes a religious doctrine ordained by God. It becomes a deadly justification for genocide. So what are some of the forces that cause genocide? The first cause of genocide and war is racism. We classify people of different colors from different cultures or who speak different languages as members of a different race. We symbolize those classifications with cultural or racial names. We forget that really there's only one race, the human race. We treat others as foreign to our own culture. We convince ourselves that because the others are different, they are inferior. Europeans developed this racism into a science, complete with a hierarchy of races, with white people at the top and Black people at the bottom. Europeans used this hierarchy as the justification for slavery, which already existed around the world, but which Europeans turned into a massive business in which over 10 million Africans were captured, enslaved, and forced to work on plantations in the Americas to satisfy the European addiction to sugar and greed for commodities. On the Middle Passage across the Atlantic, over 2 million Africans died, a fifth of the, quote, cargo, unquote, which slave ship owners were nevertheless paid for by insurance companies. The slave trade necessitated mass death. It was inherently genocidal. The second cause of genocide and war is nationalism. Nationalism is racism on steroids. It is when we conceive of our racism as an expression or boundary by our nation, in which we claim that our nation is somehow superior to others, in which our nation is endangered, in which we have to go to war to defend our nation. Beginning in the 15th century, Europe developed nation states with navies and armies that explored and conquered the Americas, Africa, and Asia, and created colonial empires. Royal elites engaged in wars with each other until the royalty of Austria-Hungary discovered that intermarriage was a better way to resolve royal disputes. The Austro-Hungarian motto was "Make love, not war." That's why all the royal families of Europe are related to each other. It's also why so many royals were locked up in special homes for people with congenital anomalies. Out of these nation states grew nationalism. In the revolutions to overthrow royal elites, populist leaders discovered that one of the most powerful motivators to convince peasants and merchants to ignore their class conflicts, to unite and take power, was nationalism. If leaders could convince the people that their primary identity was national, not human, they would join armies to conquer other nation states and empires. Nationalism is the ideology that populist leaders are still using to fool their people into supporting them. Donald Trump exploited fear of Muslims and immigrants from Latin America to become president of the United States. When he called immigrants at our southern border robbers and rapists, he used dehumanization to justify putting their children into cages. When he called them illegal aliens, I always wanted to ask what planet he thought they were from. We see this same fear of Muslims and immigrants used by Viktor Orban in Hungary, the AfD in Germany, Marine Le Pen in France, and most tellingly for this conference, Narendra Modi in India. When nationalism is combined with religion, it turns deadly. It turns nationalism into a sacred religion. Those who do not believe in it are following the devil. If they follow some other religion, in fact, they must be killed. Nationalism becomes the driving force for war and genocide. Nationalism in the 20th century caused 2 world wars and cost over 200 million lives. It is the motivation now for Putin's war of aggression in Ukraine. Nationalism, in fact, is the root of fascism, which is centered around nationalism and racism. Nationalism, when it metastasizes, becomes colonialism. The third cause of genocide and war is colonialism. Convinced by their scientific racism that Black people and Asians were racially inferior to white people, European nations drove their colonialism deep into the heart of Africa. Belgium's King Leopold studied how Spain had made its colonies in Latin America turn a golden profit. Leopold applied the lessons to the Belgian Congo, which in fact he claimed as his own personal property. Rubber was a valuable commodity, so Leopold sent his army deep into the Congolese rainforest to force African villages to harvest rubber from trees. If they didn't meet their quotas, his troops cut off the villagers' hands and collected them in baskets to prove their enforcement. As many as 10 million Africans died in the Belgian Congo. Colonialism in the Americas reduced the population of Native Americans and other indigenous people by 90%. 90%. Although many deaths were caused by diseases for which Native Americans had no immunity, estimates of deaths in wars, forced displacement, and starvation are in the hundreds of thousands and possibly in the millions. Whole tribes were massacred, and bounties for Indian scalps were paid by states like Texas and California. The British consolidated their domination of India. They ran an extractive empire that grew raw materials that Britain manufactured into products and machines. The British made Indians grow cotton, but Indians were not permitted to weave it into cloth. Surrounded on 3 sides by salty seas, Indians had to import their salt from Britain. British unification of India meant that the complex patchwork of princely states and directly ruled territories included people of multiple religions. Partition in 1947 resulted in double genocide as Muslims fled to Pakistan and Hindus to India. Pakistan became a nation defined by religion as Islamic. But India wisely chose instead to become a secular democracy with freedom for all religions guaranteed by its constitution. Today, in fact, 200 million Muslims remain in India, more than in Pakistan. Pakistan then committed genocide against the Bengalis of East Pakistan in 1971 when Bangladesh declared its independence. Pakistan's army murdered at least 1 million people, including both Muslims and Hindus. It is the secular character of India and its constitution that Prime Minister Modi, the RSS to which he belongs, and the advocates of Hindutva want to overthrow. They want an India for Hindus, in which Muslims and Christians will be second-class citizens, tolerated at best, excluded from full citizenship, and murdered at the worst. As Genocide Watch has warned, the genocide of Muslims in India is already in preparation. Now, the Modi government says Genocide Watch's warning about preparation for genocide of Muslims in India is exaggerated, but they haven't read the Genocide Convention. The Genocide Convention says in Article 3, and I quote, "The following acts shall be punishable: genocide, conspiracy to commit genocide, direct and public incitement to commit genocide, attempt to commit genocide, and complicity in genocide." So the genocide doesn't have to actually be already underway in mass killing for genocide already to be punishable. In other words, people who incite genocide are committing a crime. Direct and public incitement to commit genocide against Muslims is exactly what was preached by Hindutva leaders at Hardwar in December. I quote, "If 100 of us become soldiers and are prepared to kill 2 million Muslims, then we will win. We will protect India and make it a Hindu nation." That's a quote from Pooja Shakun Pandey, a senior member of the right-wing Hindu Mahasabha political party. Now, the Hindu Mahasabha's vision, according to the group's official website, is to declare India the national home of the Hindus. The website says if it takes power, it will not hesitate to force the migration of India's Muslims to neighboring Pakistan. In 2015, Sadhvi Deva Thakur, a senior member of the group, told reporters Muslims and Christians should undergo forced sterilization to control their population growth. The BJP has its roots in the RSS, a right-wing Hindu group that counts Modi among its members. Many RSS members are adherents of the Hindutva ideology. They want to make India the land of the Hindus. In 2018, India's current Home Minister, Amit Shah, said that Muslim immigrants and asylum seekers from Bangladesh were termites and promised to rid the nation of them. To defeat Modi's religious nationalism, India must recenter Indian nationalism. It must take the religion out of Indian nationalism. India's nationalism must be recentered on the secular vision of India's founders, Gandhi, Nehru, Ambedkar. Religion must be removed from India's nationalism. So what is to be done? What must we do? Indians must build a popular movement within India to resist and overthrow the BJP and Narendra Modi's religious nationalism. This movement must be led by people in India who believe India must remain a secular democracy. There are good signs that this can be done. India still has a relatively free press. India still has a relatively independent judiciary. India still has laws that can be used to prosecute incitements to commit genocide. The law can be used to prosecute corrupt BJP officials. The Indian diaspora can support this movement for a secular constitutional India. Communications today have become international. This conference is an example. We have heard from scores of speakers from the Indian diaspora, from experts in India, from genocide scholars, from survivors of past genocides in India and other countries, and from activists around the globe. We must keep the pressure on. We should organize a continuing movement in the US, Europe, the UK, Australia, and around the world to keep the defeat of Modi's religious nationalism at the top of the policies of every democracy. With that goal in mind, Genocide Watch and other members of the Alliance Against Genocide who have organized this conference today announced the formation of a movement to campaign around the world to defeat Modi's attempt to subvert the Indian Constitution and turn India into a genocidal society. Thank you for your attention. And as we continue our conference today, I hope that we will consider how we can organize such a movement. Thank you.